Morning. I'm Gerald Stevens with Nurseries Caroliniana in North Augusta. We've had a garden center and a nursery where we grow one of the largest selection of plant material in the United States, and that's more or less trees and shrubs and woodies that do around here. We have perennials also, but we grow one of the largest selections in the United States, and we ship it mail order all over the United States. Let's talk about the garden center, which is right here, that we've been in business for 47 years. I'm more or less the procedure person. I have my brother, Ted Stevens, I call him the plant nut. He's the one that has given us such a large variety of plants. We have over 3,000 different varieties of plants. Most nurseries have around 300, and we've got over 3,000. We're not a big nursery, but we have a large variety of unusual stuff. But we have also just the regular run-of-the-mill stuff that you can landscape a house with. I'm a procedure person, But let's talk about lawns right now. We basically, in our area, the CSRA, we have 4 different grass types. We've got Bermuda, and what we're talking about is more or less the golf course type Bermuda. And that's the tipways and things like that. The seeded Bermuda really does not do well here. It's not cold hardy because all the seed are grown in Arizona. And when they bring it here, we lose about 90% of it through a winter. So we like to use the sodded type, or you can sprig it, but most people don't sprig anymore. But most people sod it. Now, Bermuda likes a lot of sun. It needs at least 5 hours of full sun a day. Then we've got Centipede that it can take 4 hours of full sun a day, and then we got St. Augustine in Georgia, and they need 3 to 4 hours of full sun a day. And when we say full sun, we're not talking about the afternoon sun that right on the edge there. We need sun in the middle of the day. It's going to get 3 to 4 hours, or 4 to 5 hours, or 5 hours plus. So when I'm a landscape designer, so when I go in the yard to look at it, I start eliminating a lot of grass that's not going to grow anyway because it's too shady. So I draw a plan. One of my little quirks is to draw a grass line. And grass line is what it is where grass will grow and where it won't grow. And I like to shape my lawns like a golf course green, for no better explanation. And it gives you these nice curves all the way around it, and then it eliminates the shade under the trees, and it gives you the full sun in the middle of that. And then a lot of lawns maybe have a tree out in the middle of the yard, and so you end up having to put a circle around it with plants under that. And I try to eliminate that problem, but sometimes you can't. And you can put an island out there, and that's fine. But it makes it a lot easier to mow when you've got the curves all the way around. But it also, the shape looks good. When you're passing a yard at like 35 miles an hour, the main thing you see is the grass. And then you see if it's got a real nice definition with those curves and all that make it look nice, it looks good. But if you've got it where most people just have grass filling in the cracks everywhere and then it fades in and out, that makes it, it just doesn't look good especially when you're passing it at 35 miles an hour. But let's get into the care of it. Okay, Bermuda, Georgia, Centipede, and St. Augustine. Go into care of the different varieties of grass. We have a very simple lawn or program for a lawn, and we use a product called atrazine that we like to put out in the fall, in October or so, November. And we also like to put it out again, that's for the winter weeds. We also like to put it out in the spring, like in February and March, for the summer weeds. And on all the grasses except Bermuda, we can do a third application like in May or June. But the atrazine is a pre-emergent and a post-emergent, which most pre-emergent just prevent seed from germinating. But this one is a post-emergent also that actually kills weeds as they come up. So your window of opportunity there is not quite as narrow as it is with just a post-emergent. But another neat thing about atrazine, it gets broadleaf weeds as well as grassy weeds. And most pre-emergents don't do both. Some of them do. We have to be careful with some pre-emergents like the Scott's Halts, because it will keep a lot of our grasses, because most of our grasses are runners. Well, all of them are, all four of them are runners, and it prevents them from tacking down, and the root system won't tack down. And so we like the atrazine because it doesn't inhibit root growth on our grasses. It will on the weeds, but not on the grasses. But we like to apply it, and we've got a granular and a liquid. The granular is right here in this bag, and it says weed and feed, but it's mainly it's not a feed, it's mainly just a weed. Even though it says that, it's a 007, but the 7 is not going to stimulate your lawn. University of Georgia did a lot of research on timing of fertilizing a lawn. And this is very important because we all want to get our lawns going early. Well, if you fertilize before May, you can actually cause more damage than good. And most people like to fertilize before May because they're trying to get it green up. But what they found out is when you fertilize it early, number one, you're wasting your money because it can't absorb it until it's fully green. But the main problem is it causes fungus to get in your grass when you fertilize it early. I'm not sure what the mechanism there is, but when I question my customers that come in the summer with fungus in their grass, most of them have fertilized early before May. So hold off your fertilizing until May. Now there are a lot of weeds that will come in even after you've applied the atrazine, but more or less they're specific weeds, like nutgrass or bahia, which is highway grass, or maybe hopefully you've prevented the crabgrass, but there's a lot of weeds. So when you have that problem and the atrazine has missed it, you come in here and bring the weed and we'll try to identify it and help you with a specific weed killer that will get it. And this applies to almost all our lawns. Now fertilizing, again we're talking about May, not before May. And we've got a great fertilizer that I've experimented with for the last 20 years. And the fertilizer is a 21-4-9. And it's a commercial fertilizer. It has no settings on the bag of how you apply it. We will tell you how to apply it. But it's not cheap. We do sell it, we sell it in a 50-pound bag for $98. We have another one that's the 1266 that is $49.99. But the 50-pound bag for $98 is probably the most economical, especially for Bermuda, because you apply it one time a year. It lasts 12 months. Most people don't get that when I say it lasts 12 months, but it lasts 12 months. And the thing about it is your middle number is phosphorus. And that's what everybody is trying to stay away from now, because our 10-10-10s and things like that, the cheaper fertilizers. The phosphorus is superphosphate that they use, and the phosphorus is very, well, it's not water soluble. It stays in the ground forever. It moves at 1/4 of an inch a year in the soil. So when you apply it again, you pile up phosphorus. Well, in this fertilizer, the phosphorus is different. In both of the fertilizers, it's different, and it's water soluble, so it will actually dissolve out of the soil, and you won't get the buildup. And it lasts. The first one, the 2149, lasts for the whole season, and I have testimony after testimony of customers coming in and said they applied it in May, and it kept their grass green all the way through October. So you can't ask for much better than that. The 1266 is great. We use it on mainly on the centipede lawns. It's mainly will cover about 6,000 square feet. Did I say the other one covers about 10,000? And that's a front and backyard mostly. But the 6,000 for centipede, you could use that on 10,000 or the 1266 because centipede doesn't need much fertilizer. So the 1266 is better for probably centipede because and you can use it for the St. Augustine too. But your best buy. You can use the 2149, the $98 bag on all our grasses, and it's very good because it doesn't give them that quick startup. A little about fertilizers. The 10-10-10 that everybody is so cheap and everybody just thinks it's great. It lasts in our soil about 3 weeks. The nitrogen especially. It's gone in about 3 weeks. And most, even slower release fertilizers will not last over about 6 weeks. Whereas this one is going to last you 12 months. It's just a total different. You can't even hardly think like that because you're thinking of fertilizers that's going to apply 2-3 times a year for your lawn. And it will not stimulate your grass late in the spring in the fall because when it starts heating up, it will slow down, and it'll actually, when it gets cold, it just quits dissolving. So you're not going to hurt your grass by using that. So that's your 2 basic fertilizers we're using. Okay, this is our main weed killer, the atrazine, and it's a commercial product. It comes in a 50-pound bag. It is $24.99 a bag, which is inexpensive when it covers 12,000 square feet. But it's very good. It says weed and feed on it, but it's like I said before, it's 007, and that's not really a feed. We don't want to feed. That's why we do sell weed and feed, but we prefer to sell the weed killer separate from the fertilizer because everybody wants to get rid of their weeds early. And when you fertilize early, you're going to have problems. So we use the 2 separate, and we like that better than the weed and feed, although we do sell weed and feed, just the standard weed and feed. But they're not as slow releasing as this stuff. This stuff's just incredible. And these are our 2 fertilizers and they're both commercial. We had this one, the 1266, especially blended for us because we used to have a fertilizer, Stay Green, that was a nursery special, 1266. And our customers just love it, and we've sold it for 40 years. So when Stay Green quit making it, we had this company, the Harrell's company, make it. And they said, there's only one problem. I said, what's that? They said, it's going to last a whole lot longer. I said, that's great. We love it. So the 1266 is mainly our fertilizer for deciduous shrubs and fruit trees and blueberries and even a garden. It works great in that. We get hooked, confused by people saying, well, you need an azalea fertilizer and a camellia fertilizer and a holly fertilizer and a tree fertilizer and a fruit tree fertilizer and all that. We've got over 3,000 different plants, and we use this fertilizer right here on all of them. And it is not just second best just so you can use it on all that. It is the best. 2149, I've moved away from 1266 to the 2149. It's just my favorite because it lasts 12 months. But it's got 6 minor elements in it, like zinc and iron and copper and molybdenum and boron and manganese, that are in minor, just very minute quantities, but it's what the plant needs. The plants are always needing the other nutrients, whereas no other fertilizer on the market has that in it. You may find some fertilizers that have iron, but you'll never find fertilizers that have the other 5 or 6 elements in there, and this has them all. But we use this in the field because we don't want to go, and it lasts 12 months, because we don't want to go around every 3 or 4 months and put another 500,000 cans. We don't put another tablespoon. We do have applicators, but still you don't want to do the labor. Whereas this one lasts the whole season, and that's what we like. The 1266 is very good. It's less expensive. It's very good for the fruit trees and anything deciduous. And it works on the other stuff too. Azaleas are real heavy feeders. And if you use the 1266, you need to use it twice a year, so you might as well get this one. And we do sell it in smaller quantities. But this one lasts you the whole season. But stuff that's going to lose their leaves in the winter, this one is totally sufficient for that. We do use it in vegetable gardens. We use both of them in vegetable gardens. We use it around flowers and shrubs. And when I fertilize, I tell people to be lazy about it. I said, don't pull the mulch back. Don't scratch it in. Actually, people, when they scratch it in, you're actually doing a little more damage. You're doing more damage than good because you're putting the fertilizer directly at the root, and you can have the potential to burn the roots. But we just tell you to be lazy about it, go right on top of the mulch, and then the water and the rain will take it in. These fertilizers are just so unique because they do last so good. And like I say, we use these in vegetable gardens too. Vegetable gardens have been extremely popular this year because everybody's stuck at home with the pandemic and just don't know what to do. So they're working in their yards, and now they want to grow vegetables, and probably a very good idea. Now, tomatoes are one of the most popular of all the vegetables, but they're probably one of the hardest thing to grow a good one. Most people grow them in the ground, and then then they plant them in the same place the next year, and then you have all kind of problems because the soil has so many funguses and everything in there, bacteria, that you get a problem with your tomatoes. But if you can spray them, and I can't tell you how to spray them organically, there's nothing really that good organically. If you want to do it organically, it's probably what you do is plant them and hope they bear quick and get what you can off of them. Maybe you need to plant a lot more because funguses are probably one of your main problems, and viruses and things like that are transferred to the plant through little insects like no-see-ums that we found in the yard, and they're the ones who contaminate the tomato. So by getting your crop in early, and if you're not organic, we can show you different things that are very good sprays that'll help you. But tomatoes are a lot of fun. We do normally have a seminar by what I call a real professional tomato grower. He grows organic seed for all the heirlooms. varieties, some of the little old varieties, and but we weren't able to have him this year because of the pandemic. Okay, let's talk about tomatoes a little bit. They are a booger to grow, but they are so rewarding when you grow them. And just grow as many as you can, and hopefully the vine will last as long as you can. Here's a nice tomato right here, a good size, but we're having a real hard time getting tomatoes the size. Like this one right here is what we're normally getting right now. And so we're, the tomatoes though, normally what I'll do with a tomato like this is I will put it in the ground about this deep and pick off these lower limbs so that it will root up and down the stem, and that way it has a better root system. There's so many varieties of tomatoes, but you just have to pick out what you like best. Probably my favorite is Better Boy or Park Swapper. There's a whole variety of tomatoes, and if you plant it in the ground, try not to plant it in the same place you planted the tomatoes the year before. Try to move it over a good bit away from it. But most people are planting them in pots now, and most people plant them in like a 2 or 3 gallon can or a 5 gallon. Old think 5 gallon bucket's wonderful. A 5 gallon bucket is not near enough for tomatoes. We normally like to use a 15 gallon can because it's going to totally fill up that can. And if you do that, you'll water it once a day. But if you do it in anything small, you're going to have to water it 2 or 3 times a day. And we put it in a 15 gallon. When you do put it in a container, use good potting soil. Don't use any yard dirt, because when you use the yard dirt, you just contaminate it, your soil, with all the insects and diseases that were out there. But also, you don't want to just use like topsoil. If you buy topsoil from the store, that's not good, because topsoil is not made to drain. You want to use potting soil in your containers. And that goes for raised bed gardens too. If we have time, we'll go into that. But right now, just going with tomatoes. Use all topsoil. Raised bed gardens, we use all topsoil in those too, because you need it to drain. And that's your main thing. Well, it dries out too quick. Okay, it does, but if you get rain for several days in a row, the rain will drown your plants if it doesn't drain well. So you need a well-drained soil. So we use a 15 gallon container. And most people use tomato cages like these two. And they're not near big enough. This one is getting close. Of course, you turn them upside down like this. This one's getting close. But my favorite tomato cage is made out of concrete reinforcing wire. And it fits real nicely on a 15 gallon container. And you will not believe, in probably 2 months, it will already be up to the top of this. Now, when we get our tomato guy to come back next year, he will tell you about how to pick off different suckers and things, and how to prune a tomato and keep it going. So there's your my favorite tomato cage and my favorite container. All right, now when we put a tomato in a pot or in the ground, we put at least a cup of lime with it, because there's one of the problems that we have with tomatoes is called blossom end rot, where the bottom of the tomato turns black. When you first get it, it's starting to ripen, and all of a sudden you see it's the bottom of the tomato is turning black. So lime is one of the major preventers of that. There are other things that prevent it too, but you've got to have the lime there to do it. And then we use the fertilizer we talked about before, the 2149 or the 1266. People say, well, 2149 or 1266 is too much nitrogen. Well, when you divide it out over 8 to 10, 12 months, you take 2149 and divide it by 12, and you got about 2% a month, which is not bad. You know, you got a 2 for 6 or whatever. It's a lot. So you're not putting a lot of nitrogen initially, which you think you would if you used another fertilizer. Yes, 2149 would be way too much. So by putting on our fertilizer that's going to last a long time, it's just a great fertilizer all the way around. Some of the other vegetables we have, we've gone through the tomatoes. We've got peppers, and peppers are extremely popular. And if you really are brave, we've got one called the ghost pepper, which I'm not even close to being brave enough to handle. And we got one called the Carolina Reaper that is probably the most stones or whatever you can get in the world. And you have to be a nut to try that one. But in tomatoes and peppers are one of the things you probably do want to buy as a plant already started. If you ever try to start seed in the house, it's very discouraging, but don't get discouraged because the seed, you got to have a light, like a fluorescent light, within like 6 to 8 inches of the plants, of the soil. And you move it up as the plants grow. Otherwise, they'll get real tall and thin and fall over and rot. So don't get discouraged if you don't grow well in the house. You've got to have a light. But so tomatoes and peppers are real hard to grow. We do have a chart that is available that we'll make available to you. That it's got it for Clemson, for the central part of the state of South Carolina, which is where Aiken County is, and it tells you approximate dates. You can plant everything, so you'll know what to plant and whether to use transplants or whether to use seeds. Then we've got squash, and cucumbers, but those, believe it or not, can be started in the ground so easily that you probably don't even need to buy the transplants, although I'll be glad to sell them to you, because they do well from seed and they come up very easily, so it's not a problem. Then when you get beans and corn and stuff like that, those do very well as seed. And then eggplant. Now eggplant's a different story. You do need to probably buy the transplants of eggplant. Right when you do then you got all your cucumbers. This is interesting here. I don't know if you can see this, but this is asparagus. Now asparagus do real well here. Now, asparagus are perennial, which means it will come back every year and get better and better. And then you can cut off half of the shoots or 3/4 of the shoots and actually eat them. And you will learn about that. Okra is another thing that we sell in the pots. And okra is notorious for not coming up in cool weather like we're having right now. But we usually wait till May and okra comes up real good. People have a lot of trouble getting okra up, but it comes up well. And okra, y'all, if you plant okra, you got to be ready to start. When it starts bearing, you got to cut it every day. You got to cut the okra off every day or every other day, or it'll get too long. We've got one variety called Emerald Velvet Okra. I think that's what it's called, Emerald something. And it is a very good okra, because if it gets 8-10 inches long, it's still tender. Whereas the old Clemson's Fineless, if it gets above 3 or 4 inches, it gets tough. A little about raised beds. I wish I had an example here to show you. My favorite method is a 4 foot wide by 8 foot long, and then I put 2 boards high, like 2 by 10s high. That puts it up about 18 inches. If you put it too close to the ground with just one layer, it's still going to get into the virgin soil, not virgin soil, but the soil in the yard, which will contaminate. So we like to build it up 2 boards high. And the interesting thing is the soil you use in that. You do not use any topsoil. You do not use any bulk topsoil. You use only potting soil, and that can get expensive. But it really does yield well. So we use potting soil because it will drain. I went through that before, how you need the drainage. So potting soil will drain, but topsoil won't. Topsoil is great in the ground, but it's not good in a pot or in a raised bed. So I like the 4x8, 4 foot. You can work it from either side. If you go 5 feet, it's hard to work the middle because it's too wide. And 3 feet will work fine too, but I like the 4 foot. And the 8 foot long is a good length because it doesn't have enough weight in it to make it belly out. If you do it longer than that, you're probably gonna put some cross pieces in there to keep it from bulging out. But use potting soil. You can get potting soil in bulk from a couple of places in Augusta. There's a place, Sandbar Ferry Road, right in Georgia, at the South Carolina, at the Savannah River. It's called Bricko Farms. They have a good soil. Don't use their topsoil, but use their potting mix or their nursery mix. There's another place called Earth Tech over at Wheeler Road and I-20. And I forget what their mix is, but they'll tell you what it is. It is a potting mix that works good in raised beds because it will drain. You want to make sure you get that. In my raised beds, I have a deer problem. I live right down here in the woods, about a half mile down in the woods. And what I do on my 4x8 boxes, I put 5 foot 4x4s in the corners of each box, and that holds the 2 boxes together, the 2 stacked boxes. But then I put a little finial on top to make it look nice. But then I stretch deer fence around it that's real inexpensive. And now I fix it where I can take it down and work my garden and put it back up. That keeps the deer out and keeps rabbits out, things like that. Of course, a rabbit normally won't go up 18 inches high, but you might have a super rabbit, so you better watch. But I plant beans in these boxes, and I really concentrate them in there. In my 4 foot wide box, I think I've got 6 rows. And so they're real concentrated, but they really bear well, but you got to keep it watered well. Now, I like drip irrigation. It keeps it watered, but we won't go into drip irrigation right now. That's a whole nother subject. But I've got a system we sell here that's very easy to do, very simple to do. We do it off of a faucet and a little battery-operated clock on a faucet. It works great for raised beds. And it works for the tomatoes in the containers. So what I do is when my tomatoes finish for the year, I take that soil and dump it in my raised beds, because what contaminates the tomatoes usually won't contaminate the other vegetables. But I dump it in my my raised beds because the soil in there is potting soil. It will kind of we call it oxidizing, but it rots down. I guess that's what you want to say. So we put the tomato soil from last year in those boxes to build them back up. Let's talk a little about shrubs and soil and things like that. I'm gonna quickly go through this. We have 2 rules for green thumb when you're planting a shrub. Number 1 is plant it shallow. Everything we plant but a tomato plant, we plant with the top of the dirt poking out of the ground about 1 inch or 2. It's why we do that is so that you won't put soil over it, because the soil in the top of the container breathes air. And when we cover it up, it smothers it. I always say leave the shoulders showing, don't cover it up to the neck. And you want the shoulders or the top of the soil a little above the soil line. And you can put pine straw or mulch or whatever over it, but don't put any soil over it because it has to breathe. And you don't want to sink it in a hole. You want to bring it up so that it's a little above. When we used to grow everything in ball and burlap, we we would put a rim around it. And normally you don't have to do that now. If you want to put the rim around it of dirt so it'll hold water, that's fine. But number one is planting shallow. All right, number two is water. In a 3-gallon can plant, this is not the best looking plant in the world, but in a 3-gallon, maybe that's not a 3. But we put a gallon of water every day for 8 weeks at this time of year. You do a third of the amount of dirt in the container with water every day for 8 weeks. That's to get it, see, I don't care how much it rains or whatever, it's only getting it right there. It's not getting all this water out here that the rain or the sprinklers are bringing. So we need a gallon of water every day for 8 weeks. If you use a gallon can plant, will need a quart of water every day for 8 weeks, because that's a third. This is only a 3-quart can, even though we call it a gallon. But it'll take a quart of water every day for 8 week. So water is so essential, because until it roots out into the ground around it, you can't get that water. I don't care how much. If it rains an inch, yeah, that's good. But if it only rains quarter of an inch, half inch, normally that's not quite enough. Now that rain will sustain it that day, but the next day you got to give it that quart of water or that gallon of water. So always remember that. It's the those are the two things for a green thumb right there that'll get you to keep a plant living. Now we'll do that for 8 weeks every day, and then after the 8 weeks we want to do it about 2 or 3 times a week all the way into October. So don't just forget it. Now if you have an irrigation system, normally it will do that for you. The irrigation by then will, because the roots are out, the irrigation will probably sustain it. But don't just up and cold turkey cut the water off, because you're going to kill the plant. We lose most of our plants from is it August and September. It's when people lose most of their shrubs and things that they planted in the spring. And the fall is by far the best time to plant, because when you plant in the fall, you don't have to keep it watered as much. Let's say you plant it in October, November. Water it 3 times a week then, and then in November you water it once a week, and then water it once a week through the winter. And a lot of times you don't have to water it because you're getting enough rain to sustain it. So the fall is by far the best time to plant. We say fall is for planting. That's just a slogan that nurserymen have, but everybody plants in the spring. You know, everybody gets spring fever when planting in the spring. Okay, let's talk about shrubs and trees. The main thing about shrubs and trees and plants that you plant in your yard or around your house is the sun. How much sun does it get? How much sun does it need? And so we need to be aware of that. I'm a landscape designer, and when I go to a house, my main concern is where's the sun. And I have a sense of direction. And I realize late in life that not everybody has a sense of direction. And that is probably the most important thing about is the sun. Where's the sun coming from? And I automatically know that because I have a sense of direction. A lot of people don't, so you need to look at it. But that's what helps me go into a person's yard, instead of just them coming in with a bunch of photographs and a blueprint, is where's the sun, you know? And it gives me an idea of what we can do in the yard, because like most of the shrubs and trees in this area like full sun. Well, all of them like full sun, because they wouldn't be here because they're in full sun. But there's a lot of plants that need full shade. And there's a lot of plants that can take both. There's a lot of plants that would like partial sun and partial shade. So we've got all those, and that is so important when you're planting shrubs in your yard. Like you take fruit trees, for instance. We sell a lot of blueberries. The more sun a blueberry gets, the better it's going to do. We just talked about vegetable gardens. The more sun they get, and people say, well, I want it to get like half a day of sun and so it won't burn it up in the afternoon. No, they need full sun all day. If they're not getting full sun, you're not going to get your full benefit, like blueberries. If they don't get full sun, they'll bear, but the blueberries won't be near as sweet because the sun is what adds the sugar to the plant. So that's a big factor in doing your shrubs and trees, is knowing how much sun or shade you're going to get. And the soil condition, we want to talk a little about soil. I know the soils for the CSRA pretty good, but everybody has different soils. But I know over in Evans, Georgia, and all over in there, it's mostly heavy clay. Over here in our area, we're pretty sandy. You go up to Edgefield and all up there, and it's pretty heavy clay. So you got to know how to handle that. When I say about the containers and how much water, if you've got heavy clay, instead of a gallon a day on a 3-gallon can plant, we might want to go a half gallon, but you need to watch that plant. You got to have a sense. You can't just go by rules. Those rules don't always work. They're plants. I always tell people, you got to think like a plant. But you want plants that take full sun for full sun, and you don't want to try to, a plant won't recondition itself when you take a shade plant and try to put it in the sun. It just won't do that. Like palm trees, they can only take a certain amount of cold or heat or whatever. They usually take all the heat you can give them, but a lot of palms won't take our cold up here, and you can't make them take our cold. And people try all the time, and it just won't do. If it's tropical, it's tropical. We have a good selection of palm trees too. Most palms do. Well, I don't have a lot right now. We're getting close to being out, but we will get all kind of palms, and the palms we get are for our area. So you've got to be careful there. But I like to put color in the yard. I like to put as much color as you can. A lot of color. If you'll see right behind us, these are the knockout roses, and then the blank area right over there, there's drift roses, and we'll have a 300 or 400 coming next week of the drift roses. But those need pretty much full sun. They will take some shade, but they give you a lot of color all summer. They'll start blooming, as you see right now, and they'll bloom all the way till Christmas. Then in the winter, they'll lose their leaves, but not much, and then they'll start blooming again in April. So those are real nice to use, and they're not hard to use. When I design yards, I would have never designed a rose garden for anybody unless they specifically request it, because roses take so much spraying. But with these roses, they take very little spraying, if any, and they just perform really good. When they get too big, you just whack them back, and they'll keep going. You don't have to be careful about pruning. You can just whack them back. Pruning is a whole subject in itself, but let me just, well, it's too big a subject to just start right now, but take hydrangeas, for instance, the blue and the pink mop heads. The only time it's good to prune those is Labor Day. I mean, not Labor Day, 4th of July. 4th of July, 2 weeks before and 2 weeks after is the only time you can prune what we call a mop head hydrangea. So keep that in mind. In the fall, everybody sees those ugly limbs sticking up there, which I think are pretty, but they think are ugly. And they prune them all off, and you don't have any flowers the next year. But we've got one of the beds I design in most yards is called a 4-season bed. And the 4 seasons, your azalea in the spring, your hydrangea in the summer, your sasanqua and it's a camellia sasanqua. It's in the camellia family. Sasanqua in the fall, and your camellias in the winter. And I can show you how to put that in a bed that this turns out real nice. It gives you kind of an informal border to the yard or something like that, but it needs to be in some shade. You can put it in full sun, but you'd have to substitute a regular blue and pink hydrangea for a different hydrangea that takes full sun. Or you could substitute gardenia in that place too. But that bed works really good. Okay, now what we add to the soil is we add our fertilizer with 2149 with lime. And lime is real important because it is your major source of calcium and magnesium. Calcium, as we all know, helps our bones and everything. Well, it also helps, like roses may have a little thin little limb sticking up there with a rose on it. But if you lime it good, it'll have a thick stem sticking up there with a rose on it. And the leaves, because of the magnesium in the lime, the leaves will be a whole lot darker green and just be healthy all the way around. Now, lime is not a fertilizer. It is more, I like to compare it like lime is your minerals and vitamins, whereas fertilizer is your food. And it's really not like that, but that's the way I picture it. And it really helps, you know how to use it. But we use twice as much lime as we do fertilizer. Now our fertilizer, because it's so slow releasing, we mix, all right, let's say on a 3-gallon can plant, we use a half a cup of fertilizer. But we mix half of that in the hole and then put the rest of it on top so as your water will go down. But we mix a full cup of lime with that half a cup of fertilizer. Mix that in the hole and a little on top. And that'll give you a real good balance. Where you say, well, where's all the organic matter that you need in there? University of Georgia, and I'm a Clemson guy, but University of Georgia, the neat thing about our agricultural schools is they try not to duplicate research. They try to share it with each other. The University of Georgia did research on adding stuff to holes versus not adding things to the hole. And what they came up with was the more you add to the hole, the more the plant wants to stay in the hole, especially in clay soil. It doesn't want to get outside. It likes that bowl it's been planted in. So the less you add to the hole, the more it wants to get out to the real world. So I said, yeah, that sounds like those bulldogs, but Clemson said they're right. And I said, okay, all right. So we don't advise adding too much to the hole. If you want to add cow manure, chicken manure, or something like that, a little bit of that to the hole, that's fine, but don't overdo it. Or don't take all the soil out, but all this good soil in there because you're creating that bowl that you won't want to get out of. So, lime is very good for clay soil. Well, it's very good for all our soils. Very good for sandy soil because it's very acid. But lime is very good for clay soil because it helps break the clay down and we'll let it. Now we can get into lime, and I've got a whole hour I can talk about lime, but we won't talk about it the whole time. But lime is extremely important for plants, and in our area we don't. I don't want to say this because we don't too much worry about pH. Yes, we do, but rarely can you give a plant too much lime in our area. You get out on the coastal area where you've got very alkaline soils, you can maybe give it too much down there. We found that we don't have plants that are acid loving like you see. Go to Lowe's and buy a bag of acid loving fertilizer. What we found is that azaleas and blueberries and things like that are not so much acid loving as they are acid tolerating. And it's what that is they all still need lime. So we lime our azaleas, and I always tell people, if you don't believe me, because people say, lime an azalea, that's terrible. I said, all right, well, lime half of your azaleas and don't lime the other half. And I'll guarantee you, in about a month or two, you'll be back to get more lime because you'll see the difference. We are very specific about what lime we buy. We like to make sure we would like to pelletize lawn lime, but we like to make sure it's been finely pulverized before it's put in a pellet. So we're very careful about that. We select good limes, and it's not expensive. It's $6.99 for 40 pounds. It's not expensive, but we know it's a good brand or a good formula. So lime is extremely important. We lime everything. We like to put the lime in that super fertilizer that we're talking about, the 12-month down in the hole with it. Mix it in the soil. Want to mix a little cow manure or something in there, but you don't need to over-amend your hole. Over-amend your hole, it's going to want to stay in the hole. So be aware of what you put in your hole and what you don't.
Okay, so our first question is, how often should you repot plants?
Okay, that's probably referring mostly to house plants. And if you never repotted it, it would be fine. But probably every year or every other year, depending on the plant, you could repot it. And you don't have to do a lot. You could loosen up the outside leaves roots when you take it out, and then put it in a little bit bigger pot. But don't take it out and knock all the dirt off the root and put it back in the same size pot. That's going to be a real shock for that plant. House plants are, a lot of times if you can grow house plants, you can't grow plants outside and vice versa. But that's not always true. But house plants need a lot of sunlight, or not sunlight, but a lot of light through a window. And probably the best thing is to have it in a window where it gets a lot of light. If you put it in the back corner, you're going to probably lose it, but it depends on the plant. But probably every other year is probably enough. And you use a good potting soil, and if you want to put a little lime in the mix, that'd probably be good. One of the major things about house plants is they're in that pot, that is a total root environment. And so when you add fertilizers, there's no way for the fertilizers, they dissolve, but they usually stay in the pot, and we'll get what we call a salt buildup. And so what I found with a lot of house plants, you'll start seeing that white rim form around the edge of the pot, and that salt that's left from the fertilizer. By the way, this fertilizer we use with the blue stuff, the 2149, is an excellent house plant fertilizer. But what we've done with a lot of house plants, people start seeing they drop green leaves and that's not looking healthy. What we found out is that the salts have built up in the pot, so we'll take them and set them in the sink and run warm water, not hot water, but like 98-degree water or something like that, through the pot, and let that dissolve the salts out. You might need to let it do that for an hour or two. Just slowly run water through it, dissolve the salts out. Just try that and see if that won't help. A lot of times that will, and that might be a good idea even before you repot it. A lot of times that will help keep you from having to repot because it dissolves all the salts out and gives it a fresh go. But that's probably the best way to do. Hope I've answered the question.
Okay, so the second question is, what are some signs a plant is not doing well, and what are steps to fix it?
Okay, a lot of problems that can happen in plants, especially house plants. If you see them dropping green leaves, we talked about that, there's probably salt builds up. But if you see little black gnats coming out of the soil, that's too wet. And what's really funny is the symptoms that show it is too wet are the same symptoms that show it's too dry. So you got to determine what that is. But the black gnats are definitely from too wet. And we probably have some insecticides you could put on the soil to get rid of we call them fungus gnats. If you see sticky stuff forming on the limbs and leaves, that is a scale insect. And most of the time that's a scale insect, especially citrus, things like that. And you're probably going to need an insecticide. You could even try Safer soap or something like that to get them off. But scales normally are really tough to get off. When you have a plant in the ground and it starts suffering and dropping, you know, what people don't realize is all plants, even evergreen plants, shed leaves at some time. So when they see a plant dropping yellow leaves, in the spring, a gardenia is real bad about that, and people get real concerned about the gardenias dropping yellow leaves. Well, that's normal as long as it's not too many. You still have new growth coming out and you still have plenty of green leaves. But underneath the lower leaves, if they drop, that is pretty normal. And then camellias and sasanquas and things like that are no course for getting a scale insect under the bottom of the leaf, like white fungus or something with little dashes in it. We can help you with that. Normally, gardenias, if you don't do anything about gardenias, you're going to probably eventually lose it. But on the camellias and sasanquas, if you never did anything about it, probably wouldn't hurt it, but it makes you feel better when you take care of the problem. There's multiple problems that we can run into outdoors. So just bring them in and we'll try to diagnose them for you. We try to stay real up on it. I'm in touch with Clemson, University of Georgia, like on insects and things and funguses. So we try to stay up on that. So bring your problems in and we'll try to help you diagnose the problem.
Do you have any advice to help maintain indoor herb gardens?
That's extremely difficult unless you have a lot of sun coming through a window, because herbs need sun. And what we think is a lot of sun is not a lot of sun for the plant. It really needs more like a greenhouse or a sunroom, but you need to be at the window with it. And with that, you need to make sure you keep it watered well, but not rotted. It's real difficult to grow herbs inside. Very difficult. Best thing to do is to try to grow them outside in a little pot or a big pot, like we did the tomatoes, or even a raised bed. You can make your little 3x3 or 4x4 raised bed or a big container. You can grow a lot of herbs in that. And a lot of herbs are perennial, like rosemary and thyme. And I'm not the best herb person in the world, but there's a lot of perennial ones. For basil and things like that, you have to replant every year. But they're so worth it, and it's so much easier outdoors than it is indoors. It is very difficult to do it indoors because of the lack of light.
Okay, so our fourth question is, how do you repair bald spots in grass?
Okay, it really depends on the grass variety. All right, let me tell you one thing that makes bald spots is female dogs urinating on grass, fixed male dogs that urinate on grass. That will cause a bald spot, especially in Georgia. Centipede, a lot of times it just fertilizes and makes it green. But if it's not too big an area, I would go get sod, because seed, all right, Bermuda seed does not work in our Bermuda grasses. It's not totally different, but it's very, very different. It's still Bermuda, but it's very, very different. So seed is not a good option for Tift Bermuda or the sodded Bermudas. Seed's not a good option for Bermuda anyway. But in Georgia, really the only way is to put some sod in there, or take some sprigs from around the yard and put sprigs in there, and that will work. Centipede, you can take sprigs and put in there, or go buy you a little piece of sod. Depends on how big the spot is. But you think if you've got a 8x8, that's 64 square feet, that's a pretty big spot, but you can go buy that for less than $100 and you're done. And of course you got to keep it watered, but you're done. If you try to seed little spots, even centipede does come in the seed, but it takes forever. But the best way to do it is to put sod back in there, unless it's too big. And then you can use Vorsia seed, centipede seed, but nothing else comes in a good seed. It might come in a seed, but it's not a good seed. To clarify, if you go to Lowe's and Home Depot and you see patch repair for lawns, do not use that in your grass, or you will introduce weed grasses that do not do well. None of the patches are good for us here. So don't try that because it's just not a good practice at all.
Okay, so our questions 5 and 6 If you have a large area with mostly sand or someplace that needs new growth, what's the most cost-effective way to get grass to grow, and when should I plant it?
Okay.
And I'll follow with that.
All right. Like I said before, there are only two seeds that do well here, and that's centipede seed and Borgia seed. St. Augustine seed, don't even go there. And Bermuda seed, don't go there either, because neither one are very good. But centipede and centipede and Borgia seed are very good, but they are extremely slow. Centipede seed, you buy it as $45 or so for a pound seed, but a pound covers a large area. Well, the reason it covers a large area is because you're spreading it very thin. But it is very reliable seed. It's some of the toughest seed you can plant. But if you plant it, and don't attempt to plant grass seed here until mid-May. It's very important because it will not come up until the ground is warm enough. So mid-May is when you plant it, and you can plant it all the way through August 15th, and don't plant it after that. Because if you plant it after that, a lot of times it'll come up, and then a frost will kill it in the end. So if you've got a lot of patience, you can plant Zorgia seed and centipede seed in May 15th on through, but it's all the weeds that have ever been there are going to come up with it. And you're going to fuss that we gave you weed seed when we didn't. Our seed is 99% pure. But anyway, all the weeds that have ever been there will come up with it. It's real discouraging, but both of the seeds will come up real well. It'll probably be the next season, the next year, before you'll see the benefits of it. Because it takes so long for it to come up and do well. If you put enough Zorgia seed in there, a lot of times it'll go ahead and cover pretty quickly. If you can afford to sod, sod. Now, I sell seed, I don't sell sod, but if I can talk you into sod, I will. Does that tell you anything? Okay.
And so do you need to do anything to the ground to prep it before sodding or seeding?
Okay. Do you need to do anything to the ground to prep it? Probably not. A lot of people get in there and rototill it all up, and that just makes tremendous problems because you get it lumpy. It's not smooth. But if the ground is not hard painted, and you can get a shovel in it pretty easily, I would just rake it real good with a hard rake to get it a little loose, so the seed out there and start watering. You've got to water it every day if you put seed in. Every day for like 8 weeks. Maybe not quite 8, probably 3 to 4. And then you got to watch it and see what's coming up. But seed is not easy. Now, when you sod, you can do the same thing. You don't have to. You can spray Roundup on it and kill all the weeds out there, and then rake all that off. Put your sod right on top of it, and that'll work just fine. Now, let me tell you a little about Roundup. I've been to seminars because I have my pesticide applicator's license. I've been to seminar after seminar on Roundup does not cause cancer. And everybody thinks it does, but Roundup does not cause cancer. Okay, I know one of the other questions, and I'm going to go into that right now, was animals on lawns where you've treated it. How safe is it? One of my professors, he said that if you just treated your lawn with a weed killer, sprayed out there and treated it real good with a weed killer, and then you mowed it and collected 100 cupfuls of clippings, and you ate 100 cupfuls of those clippings, you would have had more carcinogens in your coffee that morning than you would in all that grass clippings that you just cut. So it's what it is there's so little pesticide when you spread it out like that it's not going to be enough to harm a dog or cat or whatever, or you. Because here's what we always tell a customer. You've got an animal, put the product out, let it dry. Once it's dried, it's safe for the animal to get on. And you are, because if he's just walking through it, he's not going to get enough on him to hurt him. So it's not usually harmful. If a dog lives in the yard, yeah, that's fine too, because he's still not going to get enough on him for it to harm him.
Question number 6. When is the best time to plant cool season vegetables?
Okay, fall, we normally start planting them in September. Now, if you want to seed it, like collards and cabbage and cauliflower and broccoli and lettuce, you start seeding them in July and August, which is very early. And you got to be careful that you don't rot them. But if you buy the plants early September, late August, early September is when you want to start putting the plants like collards and cabbage and cauliflower and broccoli and lettuce. You start in late August, early September, and through September, and that's a good time. Now, if you do it in the spring, we've got charts that are really going to help you there. That'll tell you exactly when to plant what, but you want to start in February. All right, what's real strange is like sugar snap peas, or the we call them garden peas, the English pea I call them, or China berries I call them as a kid. The English peas, you need to start those in January, believe it or not. That's just, it just doesn't seem right. But you start those very early, or they won't make. Now, potatoes are an early crop too, but I forget when you start them, but it's like late February when you start your potatoes. But like the cabbage and collards and all that, you probably put them in late February. Got to be careful because we can get some pretty severe cold in late February. And put them in then, and then by spring, they'll probably be giving you your broccoli heads or your cauliflower or your cabbage. But if you wait too late, like in late March or mid-March, you probably won't get it to form well. You might get little heads, you might not get a head at all. So you got to start very early on that stuff, a lot earlier than we picked, even if you start with the plants. Now, if you start with the seed, you have to start probably in November, December to get your seed up, and that's not easy because you got to have enough sun or enough light to do that. The best thing to do is get the transplants. Probably all the debris in your yard is compostable, except big limbs and all, unless you have a chipper. But grass clippings, you got to be careful with grass clippings because they come up real bad. If you can mix it with leaf mold and stuff like that, that's probably good. You can use all your vegetables and things like that that you have left over in the kitchen, but don't use any meat products because they will give you oils and things you don't need. Now, if you do the composting correctly, you probably could do that, but I wouldn't advise it. But just have your place in the yard that you can do that in a corner and stack it. The better you stack it, the better it's going to, what we call, heat up. And you need it to heat up to start breaking down. If it doesn't heat up, it won't break down good. And but all the leaves you find are very good, and some of the grass clippings are. Now, really do gum up. They're good composting material, but you've got to be careful to mix them up very good. But you know, most of the time now we don't collect grass clippings. We like to mow the lawn often enough so you can not collect your clippings, because that helps hold the soil in your grass and it helps hold the nutrition in your grass. So when you're not crazy about collecting clippings anymore, if you can mow it often enough, you don't have to. Okay, on Bermuda, if you want a really pretty lawn, twice a week you cut your lawn. That's Bermuda. Now on Centipede, at least weekly is very important. Otherwise you get problems in your lawn if you don't cut it low and weekly. Centipede, low and weekly. Vorsia, weekly is good on that, and then you don't have to collect the clippings. So, all right, now getting back to the composting. You pile it in a pile. You can add all kind of bought materials, compost starters and everything. But you want to use all natural stuff that you started with, but most of the time you don't need anything. it'll just cook on itself. But the higher the pile and the bigger the pile, the better it's going to start heating up. You can get a thermometer to stick in your pile to see if it's heating up, and that's probably a good thing. And it will really help in the garden. Do not use compost in your containers, or you will have no drainage. So be careful about that. Okay.
For our last question, we have a situation where it's a very shaded lawn, and would it be a good idea to grow a moss lawn in this area?
I think that's great if you can do it. Now, most people are trying to get rid of the moss, but I think that's a good idea if you can do it. Now, the problem is you can't use any weed killers there because your weed killers will kill your moss. So you got to hand weed it. And if you can find natural mosses to get going, you're going to have to keep it fairly moist or real moist to get it to go. If you can find natural mosses already growing there, that's the way to do it. But I don't know if you can get the correct moss starters like online or something. I don't know. But I've seen areas in yards that are almost all moss, and I just love it. But you do have the weed problem. You just have to hand weed it. It's not easy, and I don't have a good solution to it. But that's the best I can do.
On a part of LEAP, I would like to say thank you for your help today and talking to us about all things green. So we got
Thank
some
you
stuff
so
for
much.
you, a certificate,
Okay.
and a little bit of LEAP swag.
All right. Thank you so much. Okay. The best way to find how to get here online and GPS, but be careful. Go to 143 Mims Grove Church Road. Remember, Mims Grove Church Road. That's four words. But if it takes you to Stevens Estate, please don't go that way. Use Google Map or something like that. But sometimes Apple Map uses TomTom, and it will get you so mixed up because it'll bring you in through our lower area, and that's not good. Sometimes you'll hit Nurseries Caroliniana and 143 Mims Grove Church Road. It'll take you right back to Stevens Estate. Don't go there. It's going to get you lost. Our store hours are from 8:30 to 5 Monday through Friday, 8:30 to 4 on Saturday, and closed on Sunday. We're trying to practice social distancing. People have really loved coming because they've been so pent up indoors. We'd love to have you. We cannot always answer all your questions, but we'll try. And I'm not always here to answer those questions because I'm out doing landscape designs or something like that. But please come. We're glad to have you. And look us up online at nurseриescaroliniana.com or nurcar, NURCAR.com. We've got a real neat website, so come see us, but look us up online at nurcar.com, NURCAR.com. Thank you so very much.